Welcome to another episode of Preparing for the Unexpected. I'm your host, Alex Fullick, and as always, we like to talk about things related to resilience, business continuity, anything that helps you, your organization, or your community prepare for, respond to, and overcome adverse situations. If you'd like to be a guest on the show, please feel free. You can find me on LinkedIn. I am the only Alex Fullick there, and I do respond to everything I get. Today, we have a really interesting topic. My guest I met in November at the BCI World Conference in person. We were on the program advisory group together. We both were backup speakers, I guess you could say, Dom, right? Backup
That's right.
speakers. Neither one of us got to present, but I thought Dom's presentation was really interesting. So I wanted to talk to him about it today, and I'd like to welcome him to the show, Dom Passalacqua. Dom, welcome.
Alex, I feel welcomed.
Good.
Always wonderful talking to you as we spoke a lot at the conference. Just before we do start, if you don't mind, I'd love to do an acknowledgement to country. I'm in Australia, and um, it's a great thing that we do to acknowledge our traditional owners. So I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land I am on today, which is the Noongar Whadjuk people, and all country we work on each day. Country that connects us spiritually and physically. I pay respect to the culture, knowledge, and wisdom of the First Peoples and the elders of the past, present, and those emerging in the future. I recognise their continuing connection to land, waters, country, culture, and spirit. I've been privileged to be invited on country to experience culture, music, dance, and art, and it's amazing, and I'm humbled by the storytelling that I've been a part of. I work with pride alongside our First Nations peoples, and I'm honoured to be involved with a culture of depth and beauty. It has enriched my personal growth journey and given me greater understanding of how we walk in two worlds towards a greater understanding that we are one, dreaming together.
Thank you. And I'd like to actually acknowledge, I believe it's the Haudenosaunee here in Guelph, Ontario, Canada, and acknowledge our First Nations and their contributions they make to our wonderful country as well. That will give you a hint as to what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about culture, connection, and resilience, but a little bit differently. Before we get there, Dom, can you take a minute just to introduce yourself? Because we do have people around the globe, and I want them to know exactly who you are.
No problem. So, Alex, as we spoke, when we're in London, I've had an interesting career pathway. I sometimes joke and say I'm a cat. I've had 9 lives because I've had 9 careers almost. I started as a tradesperson and moved into music and art, then into health, and because of my love of movement, human movement, that is, I got into exercise science and clinical exercise physiology, and then into health. And it's in the health world that I really got excited about forward motion. Through that health experience and qualification, I ended up in remote Australia working with First Nations peoples, and uh, getting out there in those areas and understanding culture really got me thinking a little bit more about my own history and my own heritage and also my status, I suppose, as an Australian, and what that meant, what I thought it meant, and how being on country changed the way I thought for the better. So I'm happy to be moving around and playing the guitar and working with some health and working with some wonderful people out there. And these days I've moved towards quality, governance, business continuity, and for a while there I was in the sort of medical administration. So that's how I ended up in the continuity world. It was kind of a progression and sort of a natural progression. But I feel like all those things have come together. All the things I've done have come together at one point in time, and gives me a little bit of width when I'm thinking and working.
I forgot you mentioned you played guitar. We had a good conversation in London about that, but we
Mm.
won't go down that road because I know I can get pulled into that really quick. So why don't we start with the first item that you were going to talk about in your presentation, and that was country. What are you talking about when you say country?
Yeah, so it's an interesting one, and there's I mean, people around the world think Australia as a country, but as we say, and there's plenty of evidence for, we've got the sort of longest continuous culture in Australia through our First Nations people, and in Australia there's hundreds of countries. You know, just imagine you plant, you know, Europe, for instance, with all those countries, and you plant it in one big space. So Australia has got lots and lots of countries and lots of First Nations cultures and protocols, and it's beautiful stuff. So that's the first thing about country. It's Australia, as the rest of the world see us, is not really as it is from the First Nations perspective. There's hundreds of countries. And secondly, what really is country and connection to country? It's an important thing to try to understand. And I've delved into, you know, some spiritual domains and some anthropological domains and even physics to think about this, what actually is country. And the best way I think to talk about this is probably present a story, if that's all right, Alex.
Sure.
Um, so I was a representative for an ARCHO. ARCHO is the acronym for Aboriginal Community Controlled Health Organisation, um, in the northeast of Australia. And I went to a sort of a conference for lots of health organisations coming together to talk about the great work they had been doing, and it was awesome. And one group were talking about how they've been working with a young First Nations fellow, and he'd had an accident uh, on a vehicle, and he, you know, had I think it was a C4 cut all the way through, so didn't really have use of his arms and legs. And he'd been in the hospital, and they'd been looking after him, and they'd be talking about how they got him through those hard times, and how his desire for life had increased, and he wanted to do things, even though he didn't really have much movement. And I thought that's cool, really cool. But I kind of missed this information because it wasn't there about this fellow's connecting to country. You know, as a young guy. And country connection is really important in First Nations people and the culture. It's a big part of the culture. So I just out of my own brain, I'm just thinking, okay, so did any of the family come to the hospital? Because it's not always that easy when families live remote and hospitals are in, you know, cities. Because this is a high care situation, so you have to be in a major hospital for the situation and for the equipment that you need. And so, you know, they said, yeah, we get family here. It's not always that easy because we've got to support that. We've got to pay for it because they don't have the funds. I said, okay. So who's looking after this kid when he's on his own? And so we are. I said, okay. And it started to eke me a little bit because I know being out in remote communities and out on country that's where real, you know, the real stuff happens. So I said, why don't you bring him to country? You know, and they said, oh, it's hard because we won't be able to provide the equipment to, you know, to basically keep him alive. And I said, so what you're saying is if he goes to country, he potentially could die. And they went, yeah. And then I thought about it for a moment. I thought, I'm going to say this. And I said, so? And the whole room just went, what is this guy saying, man? And they came at me and said, "Well, what do you mean?" And I said, "Well, let's say that with all your great work and this young guy wants to live and it's great and he wants to do things awesome, love that. But let's say he dies in your care. So now he's died off country, not the place he's from. And culturally that's not cool. From a protocol perspective, that there's a long journey to bring that spirit back home from so far away. And there's ceremonies, and there's sorry business. And sorry business is the protocol around um, funeral funeral ceremonies. And I was like, okay, well, how are you going to get that spirit home? And you can imagine you've got, because I've basically said you're white health staff, you're literally in a white room with white walls, um, and you've got white clothes on. What are you doing to make this fella feel comfortable with culture? And it was a really, I'd say there was tension there, and I wasn't trying to be controversial. I was just trying to say, bring the kid to country, man. Um, and if he is going to pass, let him do it on country. So the journey home to culture is way more beautiful than guiding a spirit back to the country where he's from. And then I said to the group, okay, because they didn't really answer me because I think I was asking too many hard questions. Um, and even though those health organisations, they know about culture and they're really good at it, and a lot of them have artwork around, and a lot of them have shirts like I've got on now to get this sort of um, culture being more prominent. But the key point I was trying to make is the kid needs to be on country. Um, and then I said, probably just because of the way I am, don't try to be controversial, but it just ends up being like that. What is country? What do you think country is? And they gave me the standard answers of, where someone's from and where they're born. And yeah, okay, fair enough. But from a physics perspective, I think of it a little bit differently. So the planet that we live on is a magnet, and there's an electromagnetic field. And there's frequencies all over the joint, and in different places, our genetics, our DNA really vibrates. Everything vibrates, and DNAs vibrate at a particular frequency with an electromagnetic field of where you're from, not where you were born, but where your DNA is from. So when your DNA is vibrating at a frequency that it's used to, particularly when it's 60,000 years old or more, the DNA is happy, and the spirit's happy and it's back home. That's what home is. That's what country really is, getting that vibration happen. Now, I have Italian heritage. I was born in Australia. I've never been to Italy. I'd love to go. I'm planning on it. And I know that when I go there, my DNA is going to go, oh, far out. Finally, you brought me home. And it's going to vibrate for a bit and go, oh, that's cool. And I'll probably have a hard time coming back to Australia after that experience. But I just try to make this point that country's not a bit of dirt. It's something that's bigger than that. It's culture. It's massive.
Mhm.
And if the kid did pass not on country, then the sorry business ceremony is way more complex. So that people have to guide that spirit home, and there's wailing that goes on to help the spirit see where home is. Some cultures even do physical things and even cutting, so the spirit can see, oh, the blood's over there, my blood's over there, I have to go there. Yeah. So, and these ceremonies are actually beautiful if you understand what they're really trying to do.
Mhm.
So it was a weird one, and I said, look, I said because the room was packed, and everyone's in this sort of tension mode. And I said, look, didn't really want to create tension. I just want to ask some questions about culture. And I'm happy for us to end this. You don't have to answer any of it, but if anybody wants to talk to me about it later, I'm over here. Because I could see I was making people uncomfortable. There were some hard questions, but that's the point of the story is country and culture are massive. and in some cultures, and I'm sure in your own world, the First Nations people of your own world and other countries across the planet have these things that are really important that mean more than just a bit of dirt that you're standing on. So that's what I mean by country, Alex.
Uh, just for the your DNA piece, I just want to build on that. I feel
Yeah.
that way when I'm in the countryside in England because that's where I
Oh
was.
yeah.
When I'm in
Right.
home in the countryside, I feel very different. I really do. Uh,
Right.
I've never heard anyone else say that before. I thought it was just me. So I understand the point there perfectly.
Yeah. Yeah, and another side of it is nature. Nature anywhere on the planet, nature is really what we evolved in. So when you walk in nature, walk through the forest or walk through the desert even, there's a different feeling because it's used to it. Your body's used to it. Your DNA is used to it. I don't know if that's the answer. That's just my take. I don't know if it's real or, some scientists go, what crap is that guy talking? But that's just my view on it. You know what I mean? I think it's important.
On that note, we've come to the end of our first segment. We are talking with Dom Passalacqua today about culture, connection, and resilience. We will be right back. If you like that video, thumbs up. If you didn't like that video, thumbs down. But leave me a message and let me know your thoughts. Of course, don't forget to subscribe. And in the meantime, stay prepared, everybody.